many of you, and I want you to clap to show me this, so how many of you have a sense of uncertainty in the world going on around us right now? Okay, mindfulness moment. How does it feel? Not good, right? For most of us, the feeling of uncertainty is really uncomfortable. And my life's work is about leadership. And my company, we go from organization to organization, and we help leaders develop and grow. And what we're seeing is this real struggle for leaders to lead through times of such uncertainty. So the problem is that's exactly what we need. We need leaders who can lead with vision and with courage. We've been doing research since the early 80s. It's called Trends in Executive Development. And what we do with that research is we're trying to figure out what's needed in the organization today and what's going to be needed in leadership in the future. In 2016, we did this research, and we had 466 medium and large organizations participate. And what they told us, that the number one most needed competency for leaders today is the ability to create a compelling vision and engage other people around it. We also found out that the number one most lacking competency in the next generation leaders is the same thing, the ability to create a compelling vision and engage other people around it. So we don't have it now, and if we don't do something, we're not going to have it in the future. And this is part of the struggle that we're having with the leaders. Well, why do we need it? Because of the uncertainty. We need leaders who can see through this time of uncertainty and help us get through that. It's human nature to need this leadership. The problem is, though, that our leaders feel like they're trying to steer the ship through a heavy fog. A while back, I was working with the Department of Defense, and I heard them use a term, and I immediately latched onto it, and it was VUCA. Many of you have probably heard the term VUCA. So what it stands for is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It is meant to describe the fog of war, the uncertainty of our situation, the uncertainty of our own ability, and the uncertainty of our adversary's intent. Well, as soon as I heard it, they love their acronyms. I was like, I'm taking that. We're going to work with that. So I started sharing that with the leaders that we work with, and they said, absolutely, that's what we're dealing with. It's as if we're in this heavy fog. And so I've experienced this personally as a leader. Back in 1997, I went to work for a company called CPP. So they're the publisher of the Myers-Briggs. Many of you may have heard of that. And it was a great company. It is a great company, and I had a great job. But after a few years, I decided that I needed to learn and grow, so I started looking around, and no one above me was leaving. So I said, okay, no problem. I'll learn and grow by starting my own consulting firm. And I learned something right away. Yeah, something bad's coming, right? So I learned that I have impeccable timing, not in a good way. So I start my first consulting firm in June 2001. You know what happens next? Not a good time to start a business. But we get rolling, and we're able to get some clients and start to grow. A few years go by, I decide, hey, it's time to stretch and grow again. And so I decided to do an acquisition in January 2007. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, if she makes a move, go the other way. Well, the first time we did I started the company in 2001, I thought it was bad, and it was a major struggle. But when we did this in 2007 and then 2008 hit, you can imagine what big companies do. What do they cut? Well, they're going to cut their training and development, right? So companies like mine took a major hit. In fact, we lost 75% of our business. So this time I thought it was over. And I decided that I needed to talk to someone, so I flew to Huntsville, Alabama to meet with one of our advisory board members, Dr. Jerry Davis. Now, he has since passed away, but he had been the dean of the senior service college there, and he was probably 67 or 68 at the time. So I go there, I tell him my sad story, and he says, Bonnie, look at me. EDA is going to be And then he proceeded to give me my vision back to me, the one that I had given to the advisory board. He said, it's going to be everything that you had imagined it would be. You're going to make it. He said, keep your company up, keep your head down. You're going to make it through this. And then we talked about some details about how to get through it. But what he gave me that day was hope. And hope goes a long ways. And that reminded me of another time that I had hope in a time of chaos. So when I was younger, I grew up on a farm in western Oklahoma. We had about 2,000 acres. We had wheat, alfalfa, and cotton. And there was one particular season when we had put in the wheat crop, and it had just been in the ground a few days and not long enough for the seed to really take root, and a windstorm came up. Well, in Oklahoma, that's fairly common. It wasn't a tornado, but it was a terrible windstorm. And as we listened to the wind sort of whistling outside that night, the night that it came up, we were thinking, this is not good. So the next morning, I get up, I go get in the pickup with my dad, we go out to the farm. It takes us about 20, 25 minutes to get there. And we pull up on the side of the land, and we just park kind of in the ditch. I step out, he walks around, and we just overlook this newly planted crop of wheat. And it's gone. I mean, there is nothing left, no way, no salvation for this wheat crop. Well, that was a really bad day because I don't know how it is everywhere, but in western Oklahoma, as farmers, we often had to borrow the money to put the crop in. And that's what we had done. So when you lose the crop, you lose not only your ability to pay back the bank, but you lose part of your livelihood, which is, the profit from that crop we would also live on. So we knew this was bad for our family and for our livelihood. And when I looked over at my dad, there were tears coming down his face. And he's not really a man to cry. And there were tears going down my face. But we did what farmers do. We got the pickup and went to work. And we worked the rest of the day. It was a quiet day. And then that evening, we had dinner with family, and we all went our separate ways. Long, quiet evening. When I went to bed, I felt like I had an elephant on my chest. When I woke up the next morning, that elephant was still on my chest. And I went in to have coffee with my dad, and he was excitedly writing over a piece of paper. And I said, "What are you doing, Dad?" And he said, "I figured out how we can put the next crop in. Come over here, let me show you." And he had mapped out a strategy for us to put the next crop in. Dr. Davis and my dad both created a way to get through a time of extreme uncertainty. They created a vision for getting past the chaos that we were in. That's exactly what we need from our leaders today. We need them to create a path to help people get through it. Let's talk about what's in the fog for our leaders, because it's a little different than what my fog was. So leadership today are facing some major obstacles. So think about global financial turmoil. So that's just, markets fluctuating, exchange rates changing, trade changing. There's just a lot going on with the global financial turmoil. Leaders are also worried about disruptive ideas. Every leader I know is thinking, who's coming after my industry? They've seen what happens when Airbnb goes after the hotel industry or Uber goes after the taxi industry. They know theirs is probably next. It's coming. Where's it going to come from? What's it going to be like? There's also the customer evolution. What do I mean by that? Well, today our customers have as much information sometimes as the person waiting for them. If I go down to the plaza here and I want to buy a purse, let's say I go to Burberry. I go up and I ask them, how much is this purse? And they say, an extreme amount of money. And I say, okay, well, I can get it for $50 cheaper right here. Then they might say to me, yes, you can go ahead and order it online, or, I'll make a deal with you. So that customer evolution is changing because I have so much information as a customer. And then there's technology culture shock, but really all of that is probably, the foundation of that is the technology culture shock. It's just extremely disrupting to business today and causing a lot of chaos and fog. But the one I want to spend the most time on is the demographic shift, because this is a major issue today in organizations. Let me explain. So today there are the Gen Yers and the millennials are the ones I really want to talk about. So there are boomers, Xers, and millennials in the workforce. The millennials are age 32 years of age and younger. They will be 75% of the workforce by 2025. That's 8 years from now. So you might think, oh, that's no problem. We'll have a lot of young people in the workforce. Well, it is a problem, because they're not assimilating into the workforce like boomers did and like Gen X does. What they're doing is saying, if this work isn't meaningful to me, I'm not coming. I'm gonna go to my parents' basement and I know there's a bad stereotype about them, but what I think they're doing in the basement is creating the next Facebook or the next Airbnb. Or they're gonna go to a technology startup or become an entrepreneur. I ran into an MIT grad in a coffee shop recently, and he said he was gonna leave the big company he was in and go to a startup. That was his dream. So if it's not interesting, they're just not coming. So our leadership has to shift and has to make the work and the mission and the vision interesting. They have to capture their hearts. Well, how do you capture their hearts? When we started studying this issue about creating a compelling vision and doing research, we talked to a playwright in Hollywood. His name was Anthony Greco. Anthony said this: everybody wants to be the main character in their scene. He said they don't have to be the main character of the whole story, but they want to be the main character of their scene. Well, our companies, our organizations are a story. And every single employee that comes through are a part of that story. And as leaders, if we can make them feel like they're the main character in their scene in the story, we're going to capture their hearts. So that's one way leadership has to shift. Another way leadership has to shift is to empowerment. Now, your first thought may be, that's old news. We've known for years we have to shift from command and control. But we go from organization to organization, and I can tell you that command and control is still alive and well. We have decisions coming down from the top and being micromanaged. Here's your $100, here's how I want you to spend it. And then watching to make sure that you spend it that way. It's still happening. But leadership truly has to shift now. So the way that it has to change is, yes, we have to empower the decisions to be made closest to the work. So remember that person I was telling you about when I'm buying the purse? Then that person needs to be able to decide whether or not to give me a discount. But the leader has to make sure that they're empowered to do it. So number one, they have to give them the vision of the organization so that they know what it is I'm trying to align with. Two, they have to give them the values. This is the way in which we will or will not get this work done. Then they have to give them all of the information that they need to make good decisions. So no more hoarding information for power. We have to get the information down to the decision makers. And then the leader's job becomes pinging for alignment. And what do I mean by pinging? Well, it's that you just think like a sonar in a ship. It's like I'm checking. Are you aligning with our vision? Are you aligning with our values? Are you using the information? Have I given you the right training? That's another piece. Training has to shift. Our training it has to emulate the environment that we're in. It cannot be that we're training people to sail a ship in clear sunny weather and then we put them out there in a thick fog and expect them to know what to do. So training has to shift. So the leader's job is like, did I give them all of those things? Did I give them the right training? And if they still can't make the right decisions, then as the leader, I have to get the right people in the right seats. So that's how things have to shift. So I decided to make my own acronym. I came up with this is our system for remembering how to shift the leadership. So the C is change the cultural mindset. We have to change how we think about work in engaging our employees. The L is listen for the winds of change coming up from our employee base. They probably know what's going on, and leaders need to be listening. Empower the people closest to the work to make the decisions. Anticipate and act swiftly when the winds of change are coming. And then reinvent our training arsenal to mimic the environment that we're in. That's the system. But here's my request. Every one of us can be leaders in some area. Every one of you. Just like my dad and Dr. Davis found a way to help me see through the chaos and the uncertainty of the moment, we can all do that in some area. Whether it's our corporations, our businesses, our home, communities, schools, our nonprofits, some area. Look around and find an area where you can help others get through this uncertain time. And then don't forget, the last thing is don't forget to help them see themselves as the main character in their scene in the story.